Hi guys, I am Vitold and this is a hardcore and controversial format of a video that is super necessary out there, I think. Note that this is not a full in-depth review of the V-Strom 1050 XT, as I have already published my honest review of the V-Strom a few weeks before this video, but this is a video that focuses on only what may not suit you in the newest V-Strom 1050 XT. This is for those who are ready and want to face the worst that the bike may bring, to make sure that those areas aren't actually bothering them. If after this video you feel that the V-Strom 1050 is a bike for you, then there are super high chances that it really is. If you still hesitate, then go to my other video with a list of what's the best about the V-Strom and top reasons to buy it. That list is pretty strong if you are fine with the first point from this video. If you are not, then like me, you won't get over this particular issue that Suzuki gifted us with this newest generation of a V-Strom. I used to own a V-Strom 1000 for many years, the first generation after the facelift with a moving windshield. I loved it. So you could say that I'm a fan, but I'm also very critical because of that, as I don't want to feel stupid in front of myself for seeing something wrong happening with the V-Strom. And there basically isn't anything wrong happening with it. However, you know, the first point on this list may be a little bit, again, controversial. Riding wise, this bike has only got better than ever before. So alright, let's get down to business and start. The first point on the list and the biggest issue with this new generation of a V-Strom 1050, regardless of it being an XT version or not, is its design. As simple as that. This, along with one more issue that has been there before, will be my biggest complaint, or maybe not. However, some other points may be actually more important to some of you guys than they were to me. As for this new old design that is supposed to resemble an over 30-year-old Suzuki DR Big, I don't like it for three reasons. First is that I simply don't like the lines and my aesthetic feelings don't digest it that well. Second is that DR Big in today's world doesn't really fit the reality. And the third reason is that in my eyes, this is not really the best way to go retro, and so it's causing an internal conflict in my brain. Now, if at this point you're like, oh crap, if this is the V-Strom's worst flaw, then I'm in. And yes, likely this is the worst thing about the current V-Strom 1050. The other purpose here is to make Suzuki aware that their risky decision in terms of design is perhaps not exactly the best way to go for previous customers who they want, like myself. Alright, but before I start sounding actually very offensive to some of you guys who like the design, that's totally fine, that's great, but let me just move to less subjective topics and leave this one, because those are a little bit easier to define. The second reason that you might have for avoiding the V-Strom is the lack of stability when riding straight at low speeds. And don't get me wrong, I know you guys say, no, it's perfectly straight. Oh, no, it's stable. Oh, it's fantastic. But it's not about being good or being bad, but it's a matter of comparison here. So what I do, I look at benchmarks. And benchmark to me here is BMW R1250 GS, which is just like a train. It goes exactly where you want it at whatever speed you want it. The second thing would be Ducati Multistrada 1050, which has a conventional suspension. GS doesn't, so I get it. It might kind of be like having an unfair advantage. However, who tells anybody not to invent their own fantastic front suspension that keeps the bike flat and also the boxer engine, which makes the center of gravity so low. Some other manufacturers have done it worse than Suzuki, and also that matters. Suzuki, I would say that it's somewhere in the middle, and for me that's not enough. I've also mentioned that in my full honest review of the bike, because this behavior, exactly this freaking behavior has been there starting from the very first V-Strom 1000 from 2002. It was there in mine as well. I've ridden it for years and it just isn't still right now, the old one and the new one. It isn't as balanced as well as it is humanly possible. A bit top heavy and with front suspension that used to be too soft when it was a conventional setup, and now since it's an upside down fork there, well, it's just freaking the same. How could they screw this up? 20 years of learning, testing, people modifying front suspensions in their V-Stroms on their own, and Suzuki came up and they did basically the same thing, just upside down. Of course, it's not like exactly like that. It's a little like crapping your underpants, turning them inside out and wearing again, thinking that the problem is solved. Now, the reason I'm getting so passionate about it is that I don't even believe, but I know that Suzuki has a fantastic fantastic base to build a bike that would kick the asses of more powerful and more expensive bikes like it used to back in the 2000s. Yes, V-Strom would whoop BMWs and Ducati's butts in that time in some areas. Maybe not in all, but in some, yes. And I want that back. And if I get a bike that looks badass, it sticks to this insanely sounding V-twin engine that with an aftermarket exhaust sounds like a thunderstorm, I may get such a V-Strom myself. I hope you see where I'm coming from, what the reasons are and why it is perhaps lost opportunity in some areas. I wish Suzuki all the best, but if you want to ride the V-Strom in the city and in traffic, it's still not as good as BMW R1250 GS, even F850 GS if you want to compare it to that, or Ducati Multistrada V4, or the previous 1260 and even 1200 from 2015 and later. It's better than Honda Africa Twin 1100 and somewhere there with Harley Davidson Pan America Special, maybe just those 5% easier to control than Pan America. How it feels is that you don't feel that comfortable because you've got to focus so much on riding perfectly straight. For example, between the stationary cars in traffic jams if you want to filter traffic, which is what I do a lot. That's for many people a reason to buy a motorcycle. It becomes tiring and not as enjoyable as it could be. Now look, it's still on the good side of the scale. It could be better. It's just very close to the border of an area called no thank you to me. If you gain speed, it will be fine, and V-Strom is pretty stable. In the corners, it does what you tell it to do, and it only resists a little bit in the first phase of motion of leaning. But if you're determined and you force it to lean, which is not that hard actually, you will be able to scratch the pegs and even keep up with BMW R1250 GS. Beware that what a GS will do effortlessly, leaning left and right like a prima ballerina, you will have to fight for a little bit more like a strongman or like a bodybuilder. But you will do it on a V-Strom, on a mountain road. And I would like Suzuki to work more on that. Front suspension is way too soft. What they have improved is the suspension noise that isn't there now. It's like with an old Volkswagen versus a new BMW, which is a huge difference. It may feel similarly, but if you don't hear falling into the bumps and suspension working, the overall comfort and experience are so much better. So here, yes, keep going, Suzuki. Now I'll speed up for you guys, as the third reason for which you might want or rather need to stay away from a V-Strom 1050 is that it's not as good off the road as its looks may suggest. The rough DR big. Yeah, it is an adventure motorcycle and it's got slightly higher ground clearance. That is around 16.5 centimeters, so it really is just slightly higher than in your vacuum cleaner, but you will ride over the curbs just fine. And I'm just going to say one thing. Africa Twin has 25 centimeters of ground clearance. BMW R1250 GS Adventure has 22. Ducati Multistrada V4 as well, 22. And even the regular GS has 18.5, which is not that impressive, but it's, more. The V-Strom has a more narrow handlebar than all of those motorcycles as well. And this suggests that it's not exactly even meant to go off-road so much. It can do it, the suspension will handle it, but you would have to get a taller handlebar, likely wider too. Riders have been taking V-Stroms off-road, including myself, even on street tires, and you can feel that it's like taking a cat to a swimming pool. If you throw it into water, the creature will swim fine for a moment, but it will hate you for it. Yeah, there's plenty of fancy accessories like crash bars, like engine covers, handguards. You might install off-road tires and all that you can do also to a GSX-R. And it will still not mean that it's naturally an enduro motorcycle, that's end of story. The fourth reason can be that it lacks some of the top tech equipment. I guess that it's the price that we pay for getting a non-premium product up to some point. It doesn't have to be this way, but it usually is, as fantastic deals just don't exist anymore. So you cannot have keyless access. Suzuki did one cool thing here, and they developed a one push start, which means that you don't have to hold the start switch until the bike engages, but you just press it once and the bike starts automatically, magically. That's really nice. I've got to say that actually that was really brilliant. So see, Suzuki showed that they can, but they for whatever reason just won't do as good in some spots. Others don't have that function. Mostly somebody mentioned that Ducati have it. Maybe they do. They don't advertise it either. That would be a great advertising spot, I think. But others may also have, for example, adjustable suspensions that either do nothing, like in BMW and Ducati, or do something like in Africa Twin, or even insanely capable and cool, like in Harley Davidson Pan America Special. You know, guys, we may do it manually. What I'm pissed about is the sort of screw you solution to the adjustment of the height of the windshield. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the second worst approach to the task ever, I think. The worst would be to use tools to move the windshield, and that's how it was in the first V-Strom after the facelift, while the second worst is to install a lever not on the side of the rider but on the front of the bike, so that to adjust the windshield you've got to stop in the middle of the highway, get off the bike, pray not to be smashed into by another vehicle and not go to jail for stopping illegally, then walk in front of the bike, unhook this very raw lever that's right there, adjust the windshield using your muscles and intuition, lock it again, hop back on the bike, test it again. It even took time explaining that, not even, doing that. Okay. That wasn't me. There's a company in the USA called Matstat, which knows how to design custom adjustment solutions. Their phone is, I think it starts with +1, but then it's 352 848 and 3646. Now, Suzuki CEO, please call them and ask to do it, to develop it for you. As simple as that. There's also no cornering front light despite it being LED already. There is a standard chain drive. Okay. There are no radars with adaptive cruise control like in Ducati Multistrada V4, and no blind spot monitoring, also like in Ducati Multistrada V4. There are no heated seats either. That is not the end of the world, but if you are into having it all, this perhaps may not be the place for you. The fifth aspect that may not suit some of you guys, and it actually doesn't suit myself, is that this creation somehow became a mix of a V-Strom's name, frame, engine, and a look of another bike that Suzuki used to offer in the past, so that DR Big. There's a lot of confusion about it. It's not even that it looks like an old motorcycle to somebody who doesn't have an idea about what Suzuki exactly had in mind, and it's just the style because there used to be a bike like that, which was at that time fine. It's that what it really is supposed to be. That's the question. Is it a cat or a dog? They both have 4 legs and a tail, but are they really exactly the same sort of animal? Is this a V-Strom or is this a DR Big? I'm not sure I would be a fan of what would come out of mixing a cat with a bull terrier, just like I'm not exactly a fan of this mixed heritage, and I know some of you guys aren't either. Some of you like it. Now, in the 6th reason, I'll touch upon the tech again, but in terms of how the tech that is available works. Because, well, Suzuki did add some new things. They did develop new things during that 20 years period, maybe a little less. But shockingly to me, some of them don't work as they should. You may agree or disagree, but yeah, there is no not agree in one particular spot. First of all, the traction control, which I was able to fool during the first 5 kilometers. The system got stuck. It got stuck, limiting power with me holding throttle wide open. It means that the system is not intelligent enough, and we are in 2022 and likely later as well. I've got to say that, yeah, it is better than BMW's 8 to maybe 9 years ago traction control in certain models, in which it would suddenly cut and then equally suddenly deliver all the power, causing the front wheel to jump up and down endlessly until you fall off that horse. But knowing that in other bikes nowadays it can work perfectly, it's a shame. Moving on, you won't adjust the windshield when riding. The onboard computer seems not to want to cooperate while you are riding, and only if you close the throttle, I've been told, you can change the mode and then play with the mode, holding the button and choosing and checking, and like, I don't know if that was done exactly on purpose. I don't understand why I shouldn't be allowed to change settings while just riding like that. If you want all the fancy tech, it's not the place. The 7th reason may only concern a very narrow group of 90% of riders in the world, and is that if you want to ride your bike to kind of also impress and to show off, sometimes at least, of course none of us does that, this is not the point, but this may not be the best choice because of the looks and the whole style of a motorcycle. I really like the vivid color options, but I don't see hot chicks in Florida actually twisting their necks trying to see, remember, the eyes hidden behind the dark visor or even the transparent visor to later hook up with that guy in a nightclub. I just don't think so, and I probably should stop speaking right now as my situation seems to sometimes get worse if I mention women in my videos. Here we are about to investigate the last point that I'm afraid may be hurting the bike a little bit. The 8th reason for considering to skip a V-Strom 1050 is that it may lose a lot of value in time, at least in the beginning, and be pretty hard to sell because of its controversial design. It is also a non-premium bike, and despite being cheaper, so not being able to lose as much value in the first place, I still think that it may be a hard sell later on. It is not super highly desired like those bikes from Ducati or BMW, and that's obvious. So even though the V-Strom seems to be reasonably priced, and that doesn't happen a lot nowadays, it might take a little bit longer to sell it, I think. I believe that it's worth the money that Suzuki is asking for it, if you can accept all the points that I've told you about now. If you're now convinced that the V-Strom 1050 is not for you, then head to my other video on what is so great about the V-Strom, and you will find at least one reason to change your mind again. After having watched both videos, you will be having both perspectives presented to you, and you will be able to weigh pros and cons pretty clearly, I think. And I hope that this was helpful to you guys. Take care and see you in the next video.